Chair, I make it 6 o'clock. When you're ready, we'll start the recording and live stream.
Thanks, Mark. I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay, I'll just check with my colleague.
We're all
Amy,
live. Yep, we're all live. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thanks, Amy. Okay. I seem to have gone off screen.
Might be worth just coming off and just pressing your button again and rejoining again, Chair.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, we can hear you, but unfortunately, camera went off again then. But I mean, if you're happy to start with audio, you can go ahead with that as well.
Hello, Chair. Are you able to start? If you could come onto screen for us, please.
Chair, you rejoining? Bear with us a second, committee. I think the chair may have just dropped out. He's just rejoining now, I believe.
Thank you for your patience, committee. I've just spoken with the Chair. He's rejoining us shortly.
Great, thanks, Amy.
Hi, hopefully that's better. Okay, everything okay?
Yeah, if you're happy to start, Chair, we'll make a start.
Great. Thanks. Sorry for the tech issues, everyone. We'll make a start then. So as usual, I'll read the exit note.
Sorry,
I remind everyone present that...
Chair, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You are sticking a little bit. Just to let you know. Can I just check that you've got everything else closed on your device? So there's nothing else running on your Wi-Fi?
Yeah. Yeah, I can try my 5G instead.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just better to catch it now in the beginning.
Okay, hopefully that's a bit better.
Yeah, it's better, Chair. That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so may I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded by the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can you please raise your hand input using the remote raise hand function? When invited by the chair, could you please ensure your microphone and camera is on to ensure they can be seen and heard when participating? Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. So welcome all committee, non-committee members, elected members, cabinet officers, everyone. Sorry for the tech difficulties. Good to see everyone after the August break. We'll start with any apologies for absence. I have one from Councillor Hennessy. So any other apologies?
Yes, Chair. We've got a few apologies. We've got one from Dr. Martin Price, co-opted member. We've also got apologies from Isaac De Silva and Ellen Woodfield from the Vale Youth Council.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mark. So we'll move to the minutes of the meeting from the 8th of July. If anyone has any thoughts or comments on those. Nothing I can see, so I'll move those minutes if anyone would like to second them.
Chair, can I just add, we did have an apology from Mrs. Lucy Barraclough as well. Unfortunately, at the time, there was a technical issue, so we didn't get that message before the minutes were completed. So if committee are happy to approve the minutes, subject to that detail being included.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Councillor Payne? Sorry, Helen, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I can second the minutes, Chair.
Lovely. Thanks, Helen. Okay, agenda item 3, any declarations of interest and the nature of such interests? Nothing. Great. We'll move to agenda item 4. So to start, we've got the Welsh Language Standards Annual Monitoring Report 23-24. Rob.
Hi there. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, committee, for taking this reference. This is a reference from Cabinet on the 11th of July. It's the Council's annual Welsh Language Standards Monitoring Report for 23-24. It reports on progress against two things. Firstly, compliance with the Welsh language standards, and second, delivery of the Council's Welsh language promotion strategy. These are two very detailed reports, and they're including as appendices 1 and 2. The report's been referred from Cabinet to Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, and it went to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee last night for consideration, with the recommendation that, if endorsed by the committees, the report then be finalised and published. What I was going to do this evening is try and present a very brief summary of both aspects of the report, and then obviously take any questions committee may have. As I said, they are quite detailed, so this very much is a summary. Starting with the first half, the Council's Welsh Language Monitoring Report is essentially an update against the compliance notice given to the Council with the introduction of the standards in 2015. It looks at a few things. Firstly, the Council's commitment to the Welsh language standards, and it reiterates that commitment, and the Council's commitment to providing bilingual services and adhering to all 174 standards that we're subject to across 5 separate categories. It looks then at complaints we've received in terms of compliance with those. There are 6 complaints in total that were received in the year 23-24. That includes complaints that came directly from the Commissioner's Office to the Council, complaints that went to the Commissioner's Office and were referred to us, and complaints that came through directly to the Council's Welsh Language Officer. There's a section then looking at recruitment and the Council's Welsh language skills. It notes that most vacancies are now categorised as Welsh language desirable, and that efforts are being made to advertise those posts on Welsh language platforms in order to boost applicants with Welsh language skills. It states that we've got a total now of 12.9% of staff reporting that they have some level of Welsh language skill. There are still a large proportion of staff whose skills aren't yet registered, so the actual figure could in fact be higher. But as it stands, it's 12.9% reporting that they have Welsh language skills. And it's worth noting that that's broadly in line with the census figures for the Vale, which show 11.5% of the population speaking some level of Welsh. There's a section on Welsh language training that points out that as of March 24, we had 60 members of staff enrolled either in our in-house Welsh language courses or learning in the community via the council. There's training offered for staff at various levels of proficiency. There's a section on the council's website and wider communications that details measures that have been put in place to ensure the council's website is fully bilingual and all content is published bilingually. It also looks at some progress that's been made in moving all of the council's internal communications to being bilingual. Obviously, an aspiration for the organisation. There's a section on customer service and C1V that notes the council continues to of course, offer a Welsh language option for customer service calls. Usage of that has declined, with Welsh calls making up 0.5% of the total calls in 23-24. The report also notes that the recruitment of bilingual staff for customer service remains a challenge for the organisation. The section looking at the council's translation and use of the bilingual Cardiff translation service, a little over 2.85 million words were translated during 23-24, which I think illustrates the scale of the operation within the organisation to publish everything bilingually. There's a section looking at some sort of wider cultural promotion that we've done internally, so marking things like St David's Day and trying to encourage the use of Welsh language learning through staff social events as well as the traditional language courses. There's a section which notes the council's Welsh in Education strategic plan, the progress in terms of delivering that, and how that links into our compliance with the standards. And then finally, there's a section looking at next steps for 24-25, which, among other things, details the intention to review the Welsh language promotion strategy, which I'll come on to talk about in a moment, and a drive to increase staff participation in our Welsh language courses. I'll go on then to the Welsh language promotion strategy, and progress towards delivering that is what's covered in Appendix 2. That's a promotional strategy that seeks to cover a really wide range of policy areas. There's quite a detailed action plan. The overall report is detailing progress against that. What I've tried to do for committee this evening is pull that together into a bit of a sort of thematic summary. There's a fair deal in the report around, obviously, the council's work with partners to increase the number of Welsh speakers in the Vale of Glamorgan. It points to work done by colleagues in learning and skills to assess demand for Welsh medium education and childcare services. It points to the increasing number of Cilchmeithrin or Welsh language nurseries in the Vale and initiatives that have successfully boosted the number of adult enrolments on community Welsh language courses. Looking then at those Welsh language courses, the report notes the increase in learners progressing to higher levels of proficiency within the course structure, and an increase in learners taking the formal Welsh language proficiency exams, which seems to point to an increase in proficiency overall in the Vale of Glamorgan. It also notes the ongoing good attendance at some of the family activities that are delivered on behalf of the council, things like the sort of Story Acan sessions in the libraries, for instance. It looks at some of the community engagement work that's done, both directly by the council and through some of the partners that we work with. For example, Mental Glamorgan and the annual Gwilfarth of Roe Festival at Barry Island, which is always very well attended. There's a section looking at youth engagement in particular, and that notes that while limited funding has posed challenges, there's still success in putting on things like gigs and sporting activities through the medium of Welsh, which is something I think we think is really important, because it enables those young people who might learn through Welsh, get their education through the medium of Welsh, but not necessarily have many opportunities outside of school to use it, to use their Welsh in a social setting. He also points out that the youth service, working with that I think has successfully gained just over 4,000 young people in Welsh language activities and trips over the course of the year. So again, a significant number of people there. I think a key theme that runs through the report is the nature of the work being very much in partnership and collaboration with organisations like Mentor, Glamorgan, Learn Welsh in the Vale. That is really the means through which the council is seeking to expand the sort of Welsh language offering, both in terms of education and leisure opportunities in the Vale. So it details some of the successful examples of that. And then finally, notes the future goals for 24-25, central to which being the review and update of the Welsh language promotion strategy to ensure that those actions that are being carried forward are still appropriate and that we're obviously making the best use of resources in pursuing those. So that was a very quick review of both reports. As I said, very happy to take any questions that committee might have on that. But I will say in advance, Chair, if you don't mind, that this is one of these reports that's compiled by our equalities team but on behalf of the whole organisation. So I might not be immediately familiar with all the detail, but of course I'll come back to you with anything that I can't answer straight away.
That's okay. Thank you, Rob. I see Councillor Asbury's straight in.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to take this opportunity really to highlight some problems we have in Dinas Powys from some of our Welsh-speaking families, because I can see in 5.1 that there's 100% supported finance for training adults in the Welsh language, which is great, of course. So there's a big pot of money there, but there doesn't seem to be any pot of money I can see in the Vale anywhere to get the children to Ysgol Pen y Garth. I know of quite a few parents, at least 5, that have sent their children to one of the 2 English medium schools in Dinas Powys because they have problems getting their children to Ysgol Pen y Garth, which would have been their first choice except for transport issues. So is there anything we can do? I will look into that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Asbury. Yeah, I'm sorry, school transport arrangements wouldn't be something that I've got immediately to hand, but I can certainly take that back to the transport team and ask them to provide some information for you.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Anne, if you send me the details, then I will take it up with school transport.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
I mean, really, perhaps they should have been doing this, last term in order to start again this year. But I will see what we can do for them. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Geraint Scott.
Hello, Geraint. Could you press your large activation button in the bottom centre, please?
Hello. Has that worked?
Yeah, it has, Glenn.
Sorry, I do apologise. I'll get there in the end. I'll work this out sometime, probably in the last minute meeting. So I'm the co-opted member for Welsh medium schools, but more than that, the reason I wanted to speak to you now is I head the Health Board's Welsh language compliance for Gwent Health Board. And one of the things I noted in your compliance note is something that we really struggled with, which was that the large proportion of the staff aren't recording their Welsh language skills. So actually the data you've got is only based on a third of the staff, because I think when I looked, about 64% of the staff haven't recorded it. We had exactly the same problem. We had a few different things and we linked it to our annual reviews and things like that, and we've managed to get it from 33% to 82% in 2 years. So really, it was just a kind of, if your Welsh language officer or whoever is responsible wants to connect with me, because I looked through the report, there are a few other things that kind of flashed up to me that kind of align with what we struggle with or what we have struggled with. So if they'd like to kind of get in touch, I'd be more than happy to share our experiences and what we've done to try and kind of move data sets up or actually just get a kind of better picture of what we're looking at.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Geraint. That'd be very helpful. Thank you very much. We'll definitely take you up on that offer.
No worries.
Thank you for that, Geraint. Councillor Hodges.
How's that? Hiya. Thank you for the report. Quite extensive as usual. There's a couple of points I want to make. First of all, the work of Mentor Bro Morgannwg is absolutely fantastic, not only in helping us achieve our aims, but also entertaining our kids and everything else that they do. Gwyl of Ro, yet again, was an outstanding success. 8,500 people is, I should imagine, easily the biggest event that the Vale has any involvement in our county borough. So that's great. That's the praise. I now want to make a suggestion, because obviously this will be going back in with our comments to Cabinet. Quite simply, I note that the National Eisteddfod for 2027 in the south, it's always the odd year, has just been awarded to Newport, which they're very, very excited about. I was wondering if the Vale Council would consider leading up a debate and a charge first applied for the 2029 Eisteddfod. That is National Eisteddfod in the Vale, preferably in Barry, I would suggest. We haven't had it since 1977, so I think this would be about time that we do that. And that's really it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. I think that's a great idea as well, for what it's worth. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Robert. I just wanted to look at on the section 7 around recruitment. You know, we've made great inroads into trying to recruit Welsh language teachers, particularly in ALN. So I wanted to know, is there any progress on that? Robert, have you frozen or? Oh, I thought you froze.
Am I frozen?
So we're looking at Welsh language standards and recruitment. We know there's a shortage of teachers. So how are we going? It's kind of been an eternal problem since I've been on Learning and Culture, is the recruitment of Welsh language teachers. And what can we do is the
Welsh language teachers in particular. And if it's okay, Chair, I think I'll defer to Trevor Baker, who I think is about to come in on this.
Good.
Howdy, you can see me? All good? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's an eternal struggle. And if you speak to any of my Welsh medium schools, they will move heaven and earth to try and recruit Welsh medium speaking staff. On the point that was raised with the previous speaker on data on language use, we also have a record of every year. It's the Schools in Wales annual census, and one of the questions it asks for all of our teachers, and we've got 3,000 of them, is what level of Welsh do you have? So in terms of identifying those who might be in an English medium school or those who want to progress and do additional learning, we do have that targeted data range, which we're doing. Some of the more innovative stuff that we're trying to do, and it's a bit of a no-brainer. We have a really excellent Welsh medium secondary school, which produces some really outstanding kids who go out and work elsewhere. So what we're trying to do is create opportunities for them when they graduate to come back into the school, doing things like apprenticeships or working in school support, so they can continue to develop their skills and actually get a job, because we want to retain them. So we've been working with our HR department, with the head and the senior staff at Bro, and we've been able to access some grant funding from Welsh Government. We've been able to put some of these folks on courses through the OU, for example, plus some of our in-house learning. And we've got some really great examples of kids who've graduated and stayed on and done a couple of years and then have gone on to do formal teaching qualifications. So we want to do more of that type of thing.
That's great, Trevor. And will we be having a progress report on that if we're looking at, you know, if young people have had an input? Are we going to be tracking that and monitoring it and seeing what the progress is? And can you report back?
Yeah, so we'll include it in our West reports that we bring to this committee, because there's elements in that, so you'll have a full breakdown of all that kind of info.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, Councillor Marshall. See you able to press the request to speak button, please.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've forgotten how to use it. It's because I've been coming in. Basically, I was just questioning job recruitment and job advertising. There was a section of Welsh language skills to be learnt when appointed to post, and there were no jobs advertised like that. And I was just thinking of ways to sort of promote Welsh speaking and saying that actually we do want people speaking Welsh. That really, I think we should have some jobs that the people are told actually Welsh skills will be learnt when in post, even if you don't necessarily have them now. So it isn't a optional, you can choose if you want to do them, but we would like you to do this as part of your job. Just wondering if there's a possibility of that.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's something where I think there's the categorization within the report there, where things either sort of fall into one box or another. But we would have a large section, I think particularly just about the jobs in the section that I manage, where for a lot of posts as part of the person specification, we would have the ability to speak Welsh or a commitment to learn. So I suppose we're looking for people to come into the organisation who are keen to develop their Welsh language skills and then move those on to those internal courses that we have. So yeah, does that sort of cover what you're looking at there?
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Burge.
Thank you. I simply wanted to support the idea of having the Eisteddfod in the Vale. I think that's a really good idea, and I think it would be good for our profile. So I'm happy to support that going forward.
Great. I'm sure Nick will be happy to hear that. Geraint Scott.
Yeah, sorry, me again. First of all, I worked for the Inn for 15 years. It'd be amazing to have the Eisteddfod in the Vale, but you'd go from 50 odd competing to hundreds of them. So as long as you're willing to listen to the same song hundreds of times, that's fine. One thing that we found with recruiting, again, coming back to what we've done, actually, we saw applications going up. You sort of said about what Councillor Marshalsea said about needed to be learned. Actually, we found an increase in applicants when we put on an advert. Welsh language courses will be freely available to anyone who joins us as an organisation. And actually, by putting that in there as part of the job advert, we found a lot of people were really quite attracted to that. That not only were we encouraging them to learn, but making it very clear that that would be available to them as they start.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. I'm not sure if you were finished there or just cut off, but if you'd like to come back on, that's fine. I see Trevor. Sorry, Gareth. Trevor.
Sorry, I think I was finished. I think I pressed the button, but yeah, it was just that point, really.
Thank you very much, and Trevor as well.
It's like playing video hokey pokey. The only thing I was going to add to that, the other thing we need to consider as managers and leaders in the organisation is thinking about making sure that we have protected time for our staff to undertake that learning. So it's just a plea to recognise the fact that that isn't always the case because staff are so busy with so many different agendas. So if there's anything we can do collectively to raise awareness around that or to help support having that protected time, I think that would go a long way. When I look at the figures in the Learn Welsh team, and when we think we've got somewhere between 4,500, 5,000 staff in the Vale, it's a very, very, very small proportion who are able to take up that learning. But I guarantee you, if you speak to any of those learners who've gone on that course, not only have their skills increased, but it's also a fantastic mechanism for well-being. It's a fantastic way to network with new folks. And with some of the pressures that we have, it's a really great opportunity. So anything we can do to promote, protecting that time and raising uptake in those courses, I think would be a win.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I can't see any other hands up. So we're being asked for an endorsement of the report, but I also think it's important that comments, including regarding the Eisteddfod and other things, are also sent to Cabinet, so they can see the discussion and the good points that have been made. So if I move both of those things, would I be able to have a seconder? Hands up, fine. Thanks very much, Helen. And thank you, Rob. So we move on to agenda item 5, which is the annual corporate safeguarding report 23-24.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take you through the annual self-assessment. And I'm going to start off by discussing the purpose of it, really. And of course, the purpose of...
Safeguarding. Yeah, safeguarding. Sorry, Liz.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, it's the enthusiasm we like to see here.
No, my fault. If it's safeguarding, please, 1,000 apologies for being over excited about presenting my slot. So can I hand over to Jason Redra, please, to do the safeguarding? Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair. You can see we didn't rehearse that. I'd like to obviously present the 2023-2024 corporate safeguard report, but paying obviously particular attention to the learning and skills section within it. If it's all right with you, Chair, I'm not going to have the whole report verbatim, but to pick out some of the main highlights from the report, and happy to take any questions. So if I start by saying, since April 2023, the compliance rate for safe recruitment across learning and skills, both the director and the schools, has been extremely positive. You know, most months it being 100% month on month, but there have been one breach in each month, April, June, and November, which I think is very good indeed. Moving on from that, between April 23 and August 23, so that academic year 22-23, there were 5 referrals under Section 5 of the Wales Safeguarding Procedures, so allegations against practitioners and professionals. And during the academic year 23-24, and in the time until the March, there was 27 referrals. And that's broken down with 9 of the allegations of the 27 being made against teachers, 5 against learning support assistants, and then a further 13 against a combination of supply teachers, school staff, and bus drivers. So a cross section there of different allegations. In February 2024, it saw the publication of the much reviewed Glamorgan Trans Inclusion Schools Toolkit, which obviously a guide supporting transgender and gender variant children and young people in school, which provide information, guidance, support to educational professionals, learners, and parents. And then with the publication in January 2024 of Welsh Government's peer-on-peer sexual harassment in education settings action plan, which is designed to prevent and respond to peer-on-peer sexual harassment, the director is ensuring that the recommendations outlined at local authority level and at school level are implemented, with key work streams ensuring that education settings adopt that whole system approach to creating that safe learning environment to prevent peer-on-peer sexual harassment. When it comes to the compliance with safeguarding training, national guidance prescribes that safeguarding training for education staff should take place on a 3-yearly basis. In the Vale, we consider the importance of this training with regular updates will be carried out on an annual basis to try and ensure the highest level of competency and confidence in our frontline staff. So on that note, school-based designated safeguarding persons, so the leads within the schools, at the time of writing this report, 50 out of the 54 were compliant, and with the deputies, DSPs, 77 out of the 81 school-based deputies, DSPs were also in compliance. And when it comes to directorate-based DSPs within each of the learning teams within the directorate, 20 out of the 21 were also in compliance, and those rates continue to be very similar. The Director Safeguard Officer, in partnership with Government Support, offer also terminally bespoke training for those in the designated safeguarding governor role. And at this time, 49 out of the 54 designated safeguarding governors across the schools were also compliant with this training. And we also, as Director, continue to demonstrate regulatory compliance in relation to licensing children in employment entertainment, including the licensing of chaperones. And just finally, just to say that the Safeguard Officer continues to assist in training staff as part of the national rollout programme for the violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence for both Group 2 and Group staff and for Group 3 champions. And finally, just to say the Safeguard Officer also liaising with senior officers with responsibility for well-being and nurture to ensure that all activities related to children's welfare are linked and supported, and we continue to review the effectiveness of anti-bullying strategies and recognise the impact of unresolved bullying on well-being outcomes for children. And that, Chair, is the main content, the main highlights of the report, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Jason. Any comments or queries? Councillor Asbury.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering, referring to the report, what are the implications of the employer failing to follow the procedures set out in the presentation, in particular referring to the paragraph where it says, it's under section 10, I believe, the team are focusing on ensuring that the individual who has had an allegation made against them are appropriately supported during the process and have information to enable them to understand the process. So what are the implications then if the employer fails to follow this through?
Sorry, Councillor, I can't find the reference you mean in the safeguard report, or are you talking about a reference into section 5 of the Wales Safeguarding Procedures?
It's not in the section 5, it might be, but in your presentation it's under number 10. The pages are not numbered, so it's under number 10. It has a little logo at the bottom. It has Cardiff and Vale Regional Safeguarding Board at the bottom of the page. I can give you the paragraph, I can read the paragraph. I just wonder what the implications are of the employer. Are there any? When the employer does not follow through?
I speak obviously, the section 5 process under the Wales Safeguarding Procedures is obviously for all professionals and persons in position of trust who have contact with children or adults at risk as part of their daily business, okay, as one element of it. So as far as the employers are concerned within the local authority, obviously we take that very seriously, and we ensure that we offer both support to any victims who may be identified during this process, but also for any person when allegations are made against them, so they are fully informed of the allegations, that they're supported throughout, and have all that and kept updated of the progress of the investigation.
Yeah,
and obviously,
when this
the
doesn't
local
happen,
authority.
When this doesn't happen, that's what I'm asking. I know. Can I email you on it?
Well, I was going to say, if you've got an individual case, then perhaps you could email me separately as opposed to in this main debate, because obviously it's difficult to answer you when I need the circumstances you're discussing.
Yes, I don't have anyone in mind right now. It's just I would like to know what the implications are of the employer. But if I email you, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. Any other comments, questions, queries for Jason? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jason. I just wondered, it's an issue I raised in another meeting also, and that is around kind of we err on the side of caution in relation to safeguarding, and so we should. In the additional pressures on staff in education and the time it takes, it's kind of recognition that kind of everything drops for safeguarding. And has there been any data collected in the time it does take away from the actual task in hand? So I just wondered, about the recognition of the pressures on the staff and the teachers and the head teacher in schools around safeguarding, really.
Yeah, it's not data I'm aware of. It's something that we've looked at on a sort of time motion study of how much of a day would be spent dealing with safeguarding concerns. You know, as you said, if there's blur, safeguarding blurs into well-being, blurs into behaviour. There's lots of different elements to it. The things at home, you know, it's. I'm not sure if it's. Perhaps we could look at is a way of looking at that with a sample of schools. But we have got data around the level of concerns recorded on My Concern, and that I can provide that data to show how many concerns as a school collective or clusters or individual.
Yeah,
or,
I'm more concerned with
how many.
Yeah, thanks. I'm more concerned with staff time in a way because there is more accountability. It is increased
Yes, absolutely.
in education. There is definitely more accountability with regard to safeguarding, and rightly so. But it does take up more staff time. Like I say, everything drops for safeguarding. If there's a concern about a child, that's what happens. But I'm interested because it's kind of developed over time within education. How much time really?
Okay, I can take that away and discuss that with the director, yes.
All right, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Over to Councillor Campbell.
Hiya. This is something that I've raised previously in other meetings, but why that safeguarding isn't a compulsory module for school governors? Because obviously they're going into a school setting, and a lot of school governors are actually going in and you know, spending time with the children as well, you know, doing reading and what have you. So why safeguarding isn't actually a compulsory module for school governors when they're, you know, completing their mandatory training?
Thank you for that, Councillor. Yeah, obviously I have my own views on this, but it's part of the direction of the Welsh Governors Association. It's not a mandatory element. We do request that all our governors do undertake 2 e-learning modules on Hub, and we ask for this compliance to be monitored at school level. Obviously, as well as our safeguarding governor that does a session with myself at the local authority. You know, in the same way that we ask for governors to try and ensure DBS checking is also in place, but this is something that's been debated many times, and that's the current position that we're at with it.
Thanks, Samantha. Claire.
Hello everybody, I'm Claire. I'm the co-opted member from Church in Wales Diocese of Llandaff. I'd just like to ask, and Jason, I don't think you've mentioned this, and forgive me if you have, but is there anything within the safeguarding that particularly looks at the prevent, you know, the sort of radicalisation kind of things? That was quite a big thing, wasn't it, some years ago? But I think in the current climate, I wondered, is that part of your training for staff, and particularly in relation to radical behaviour and you know, sort of extremism?
Yes, very much so. It features highly. All our school-based staff all undertake Home Office Prevent training on a 3-yearly basis. All our senior leaders in school will attend RAP training, which is obviously workshop around Prevent, so that they've got a high level knowledge. All our schools now have lockdown procedures in place for instances of radicalism or terror, and also I attend schools as part of the safeguarding self-evaluation. There is an ESTIN section on that around how do we prevent learners being drawn into being radicalised or drawn into extremism. So there is an action plan in place around that with schools, and so it very much features part of the curriculum. Very much, and you know, all these done, and age-appropriate topics are discussed on a regular basis with learners. You know, when things do happen in the world, these things are discussed as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire and Jason. I can't see any other hands up, so in that case, I'll move that we. Having considered the safeguarding report, we'll note the report and for those comments to go back to Cabinet as well. So if I could have a seconder for that, please. Thanks, Naomi. Agenda item 6 then, draft Vale Glamorgan Council. Annual self-assessment. Over to you, Lynn.
Yeah. Now? Yeah, can I go now? I'm sorry about being rather over-eager earlier. So I'm just going to take you through the draft annual self-assessment report. And was going to start really with looking at an overview about the purpose of an annual self-assessment and really what is required from members following this. So this is part and parcel of us embedding a culture of evidence-based and outcome-focused performance. We need to show that there's self-reflection and challenge to secure continuous improvement. So to meet our performance requirements, we need to report on how well the council is exercising its functions effectively. So how well are we doing things? How well do we use our resources economically, efficiently and effectively? So are we providing value for money? And how well are we run? And then finally, what and how can we do better? So in the report itself, the purpose of it is to evaluate the council's progress in meeting its 23-24 annual delivery plan commitments and the corporate plan wellbeing objectives. And of course, it aims to identify areas for improving internal processes and resource use. This is a requirement under Local Government and Elections Act. So we have to review our performance annually and publish a self-assessment report. And then I suppose it's just reassuring you really, the assessment methods undertaken are quite extensive because the report draws on performance data, including directorate self-assessments, peer challenges, and the annual governance statement. It assesses resource use and achievement of the corporate plan objectives. Now, we've got 3 areas that we look at. The performance assessment against the annual delivery plan for 2023-24. Now, we've given ourselves an overall judgment of good here. We've achieved 85% of the 591 planned activities and associated targets set, which was an ambitious annual delivery plan, to be honest. Now, particularly so, given the significant service demand pressures and the difficult financial and economic climate. Now, the areas of underperformance have been identified and remain a focus for the 24-25 year and are reflected in the Council's annual delivery plan and service level delivery plans for next year. So in our use of resources, again, we've given ourselves an overall judgment of good for how we are using our resources. And resources are people, assets, finance, engagement, insight, performance and risk management. Across our directorates, we do actually have good evidence of how we have used our resources economically, efficiently, effectively and equitably to enhance performance. To secure future service improvements. But we've given ourselves a judgment of fair to the Council's finance, commissioning and procurement to reflect ongoing demand pressures in service areas. Now, whilst we did return a break-even position in the 23-24 budget, this was only achieved after a drawdown on reserves to meet significant demand pressures in a number of service areas, which obviously is not a sustainable option in the long term. And we've also given ourselves a judgment of fair against engagement insights, because this reflects that whilst we had really good pockets of practice across all council areas, it just shows the council's commitment to take forward the learning really and the findings from the Life in the Vale survey. So we've got a bit more work to do to make sure that there is consistency across our directorates. And then the third area is looking at governance, risk management and internal control effectiveness. And the draft annual governance statement of 23-24, we've given ourselves a judgment of reasonable assurance there from the head of internal audit. And there is reasonable assurance, meaning that there are no major weaknesses in our risk management, governance and control processes. And this is based on review, assessment and ongoing monitoring. We've got an internal audit option of either substantial or reasonable assurance, and that's been given to over 82% of risk-based reviews undertaken in year. Again, showing that there is an internal control environment with 92% of all recommendations issued being in the low to medium priority categories. Now, the purpose of bringing this here is that there is a window of opportunity to present to all scrutiny committees, having just been through Cabinet on the 5th of September. The intention is that this report then is out for consideration as part of the programme of consultation, with any views and recommendations for changes to the judgment or proposed areas for future focus being referred back to Cabinet in readiness by the 10th of October. So we do have a number of areas that I mentioned earlier to you that we have identified as underperformance in the 23-24 year, and these will be carried forward. And we've got emerging areas for continued focus, and they are reflected in the Directorate's self-assessment, the annual delivery plan and end-of-year performance assessment. And they're also identified as significant challenges in the draft annual governance statement. So I suppose reassuring you that where we felt that we hadn't delivered against the 23-24 objectives, they're not being left to wither on the vine. They are being identified as priorities on an ongoing basis. So I suppose, Chair, that was just really just to give a very brief overview of the purpose of bringing the draft report to scrutiny and then the expectations around that. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Liz. So over to committee members for any comments or questions. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, am I on the screen?
We can hear you loud and clear, but not see you.
Right. Oh, well, we'll have to go with that. We had this problem earlier. Yeah, sorry. And thank you, Liz. It's I find the ratings of good, always in these reports quite worrying. And particularly with the Learning and Culture Committee. Now, we've had an interesting year on this committee. We've had, obviously, the strikes at Pencoitre School because teachers didn't feel safe in the school. Now, that should have a reflect on how this council is looking at itself. In other words, performance is down there. On top of that, our schools, a lot of them are running in a deficit. Now, if that's not a financial problem, I don't know what is. So I think these things should be listed in this report and put forward for future consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Liz, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, and of course that's been recognised under financial challenges and the use of our resources. So you are right to point that out, and we know that that is obviously a continued pressure. That's not just in our area, but that's across the council. But of course, it is an area that will require continued focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, just there's a section called "What was our budget spent on?" And basically, I just think we should use this in our comms because it's really clear, really, easy to understand, and I think it should be shared more so that people can begin to understand where their council tax is going. So is there any chance of that? Maybe it's a question for Rob. Thanks, Liz.
Well, that's really interesting because, funny enough, this did come up at senior leadership team earlier this week about making it explicit to our residents where the money does go to, because it does show quite clearly there, doesn't it? And it's an easy to understand sort of pictogram or whatever those are called. But yes, it was, I think you are right, and that may be a discussion with Rob about that with communications.
Thank you for that, Naomi. Councillor Payne.
Thank you. On Councillor Marshall's point again, when looking at the positives in terms of the self-assessment, I just talked about the additional pressures in terms of safeguarding. We've got the additional pressures of ALN, and one of the things is 9.1 is what have we achieved? So again, along with Councillor Marshall's point, we need to be telling people, because some of the criticism we get, out in the community is, what does the council spend its money on? That's the first thing. Why aren't they doing this? Well, we need to tell them what we actually are doing. So some of our achievements around our positive inspection reports, also lots of things, the additional things that teachers do, with their time outside of school. There's a lot more to it than people realise, and they need to know not only about the spend, but what they actually do. So if we could, combine those two things, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I'd like to say to Councillor Haynes that I was at a meeting of Cabinet Members for Education across the whole of Wales this morning, and every single authority is in exactly the same position. Every single authority has, regardless of who runs it, has got the same problems with schools running into deficit. Because there are all various reasons for that. You'll have heard them rehearsed at education committees for the last couple of years. I mean, a couple of people said that the increase in the number of ALN children within their county would drive them into bankruptcy, because it's a need that has grown dramatically, particularly since COVID, and government, both governments have simply not got to grips with how much extra funding is needed within authorities in order to tackle this. So I would, reassure him, we are not alone. It is not incompetence on our part. It is a perfect storm of difficulties that have impacted on education budgets.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Birch. I can't see any of the hands at the moment, but I just had a point I wanted to make about Wellbeing Objective 2. So page 31 of the report, point 4 is about supporting our schools to minimise exclusions and enhance attendance, recognising the long-term impact of COVID-19 and the cost of living crisis. Now, this has been given a green grading. But the document then says later on that attendance levels continue to remain an area of concern across certain schools and clusters of schools. Secondary attendance continues to remain an area of focus, with a reported performance of 84.96% against a target of 92%. And indeed, when we visited Pencoitra School at the back end of last year, I think it was around 75% as well. And there's lots of challenges with attendance around Wales, of course, but as the council have acknowledged in this report, there are serious issues with secondary school attendance. So I'd just like to know why that qualifies for a positive green rating.
Our attendance improved by the end of last year. So we went up, I'd like to be able to recall the actual stats off the top of my head, but I can provide that for you, and why that would then have been given a green rating. Comparatively speaking, our attendance has improved, and that's as a result of the promotion of the strategy of school attendance, miss school, miss out. That has had an impact. And we moved ahead. And I want to say that prior to that, we were below the Welsh median, but we have now climbed up quite a few places. But you are right, though, Councillor Thomas, in recognising this is a national issue. It is still, as it happens, I sit on the ministerial task force specifically to look at the reasons and maybe the cultural shift that has happened following COVID, because it's not just our children, it's far broader than our children, because our families, our practices have changed since then. But comparatively speaking, we are making very positive inroads with attendance. That was recognised in our Estin report. So despite the fact that it is still below pre-COVID times, it is nevertheless, compared to other local authorities in Wales, we are doing well, comparatively speaking, while still recognising that we are still behind where we were pre-COVID.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Councillor Goodjohn.
Yeah, I would just say, Chair, that the final thing to note is that each of these of the wellbeing objectives that you've mentioned here, specifically 2.4, each of these come directly from the annual delivery plan. So every time that you see green or amber or red, that's directly linked to the actions that we see every quarter as a scrutiny committee, and as every scrutiny committee does, regarding progress against the action. So if you're seeing some discrepancy at all between what it's saying in the report, between the actions and what's actually occurred, that's only because the actions that have been taken could be wrong, and that needs to be highlighted earlier in the scrutiny process. On the whole, I would say that if you compare it to the actions, such as the attendance plans, it's been quite positive. So this is something that we need to highlight as a scrutiny function, instead of going at the end of the year, well, why didn't it make sense? Well, this is because either the actions are wrong or they haven't been implemented in the right way. As it sounds, we've done a good job and attendance is up, but there's still ways to go. So there's more actions, obviously, in the 24-25 plan underway. So that's what we're seeing there.
Thank you for that, Ewan. Councillor Birch. Sorry, Rhiannon, I don't know if that was a legacy or a new hand, actually.
Hi, Councillor Birch. If you want to speak, just obviously press your request to speak.
Oh, sorry. Too many buttons to press. Right, okay. So at the same meeting this morning, every single Cabinet member for Education expressed concern about attendance, because it is a national problem. Obviously, this is only Wales, but the same is happening in England. When I would draw your attention to the attendance strategy that's mentioned within point 4, we know that officers such as Martin Dacey and other officers go into schools, particularly Pencoitra, which is a particular cause for concern, in order to be with families, with children who are not coming to school or not coming to school as regularly as we would like. We have put strategies in place. I mean, it seems to me that this would actually be a really good topic for a presentation to the committee, because we're all talking about it, everybody's concerned about it, and I think it's important, not just for us, but so we can go out and talk to our communities and our constituents about what we're doing in order to improve this situation. I mean, you will have heard me say many times that education is the way out for children who come from backgrounds which aren't interested in education, or perhaps they come from jobless homes. Education is the way out for them. And I think that tackling attendance is obviously key in this. And I think it would be really useful if we had a presentation of what the council is doing, so that we're all aware of it and it's not just a paragraph in a report.
Great. Thank you for that, Rhiannon. Any other thoughts or comments from committee members? Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Birch, and could we have that committee, please?
Yeah, we will. We'll get something arranged. Probably not for October, but sometime in later in the year. But we'll absolutely do that. I can't see any other hands. So in that case, then I move that we note the report and send the comments from this committee meeting back to the Cabinet as part of the consultation process. If I could have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Emma Goodjohn, thank you very much.
And Chair, do you want a further recommendation based on having a presentation given to the committee in the near future?
I'm happy to work on that with democratic officers. I don't think we need a recommendation. Everyone's seen it. I'm
okay.
Scouts promise and all that, so it'll happen. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. We'll move on to agenda item 7 then. So closure of accounts 23-24. Sorry, Victoria, we can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's great.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to first take you through the revenue closure of accounts report for 23-24. So the year-end revenue position was a break-even position after net transfers from reserves of £34 million. So the transfers from reserves were made up of £417,000 budgeted contribution from the council fund, 12 million transferred from specific reserves to support the revenue budget, 12.9 million drawdown from the housing revenue account reserve, and 8.7 million drawdown from reserves to fund the capital programme and displacement arrangements. So the council fund now stands at 11 million as at the 31st of March 2024. So the council encountered significant revenue pressures during 23-24. Particular pressures were in respect of inflationary pressures regarding contracts and pay pressures. So that reflects the cost of living, market pressures, and the council's commitment to pay in real living wage. So in services, the council also continued to experience significant demand pressures for supporting children and adult social services, people experiencing homelessness, pupils with additional learning needs, and pressures were also experienced due to delays and constraints associated with delivering the savings target. So schools did outturn with a slightly more favourable position than had been reported during the year, and that was in part due to additional grant income from Welsh Government. So the majority of schools made progress towards a balanced budgeting year. And as at the 31st of March 24, there were 22 schools in a deficit position. So schools ended with remaining net reserve balances of 2.3 million, and that was after transferring in 4.369 million from school balances. So obviously this masks some significant variances across the individual schools, with some schools with significant deficits and some schools with significant balances. So in terms of central learning and skills, that outturned with an adverse variance of 125k, and that was after transferring in 1.963 million from reserves. So adverse variances in the service included pressures in school transport and children's placement, specific school support and establishment of new ALM provision and redundancy costs in schools. There were also pressures in respect of savings identified but not realised in year, as such as the arts service and the schools repairs. So challenging savings and efficiency targets were set for 23-24, and the progress against these savings targets is good. And while services have mitigated some savings in 23-24, they will need to be kept under review in 24-25 as services move to identify these on a more sustainable basis over the medium term. After taking into account directorate movements to and from reserves, the revenue outturn showed a surplus of 2.080 million, and this was transferred to reserves to be utilised, firstly for 2 million to establish a new reserve to offset education deficits in 24-25. This is on a provisional basis while the council works with schools on establishing a coordinated approach to tackling those school deficits. And then the balance of 80k has been transferred into the general fund. So the level of usable reserves reduced in year, although by less than had been projected, but some of the commitments have been slipped into 24-25 in accordance with the capital expenditure slippage. So the council undertook a further reserve reallocation in year, and that was outlined in the 24-25 budget proposals, and that has been reflected in the outturn position within the report. So that briefly summarises the revenue outturn report, but I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Victoria. I know you've got a few financial reports in a row here. If councillors have any questions on this particular agenda item. Councillor Haynes.
Oh, you can see me, sort of. Right, it's just a request really, Victoria. Could we please have a list of the schools that are in deficit to the committee? Obviously not now. If you could just send us an email, I'd appreciate it. And, just asking whether the schools that are in, are doing well, whether their best practice is being shared with the other schools.
Yeah, no problem. I'll take that back. But I believe on the appendix, I'm not sure which appendix it is. I would have to go into the report and find it. But I think there's details of year-end school balances. Bear with me a second. Did I see that somewhere? Yeah, I think it's in Appendix 3.
Okay, thank you. I'll look there.
Yeah, no problem. But I will definitely take back your comment about sharing best practice. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Steve. Councillor Payne.
Hi, Victoria. I'm just interested in the out-of-county placements for ALN. There's been an increase. What was the increase? There's a 5k variance on here. So in terms of the total budget, what is the total budget on that? Sorry.
Oh, I haven't got that.
201,000. Okay, 201,000 plus the 5k, is it?
I haven't been involved in that projection.
Right,
so can I, if I contact my colleague and you tomorrow, is that okay? And we'll get a response to you.
Thank you.
In child placements, no problem.
Thanks. It's on the outturn headlines.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I can't see any other hands up on this agenda item. So in that case, I move that the report and the financial measures taken and proposed, as well as the allocation of overall council surplus, be noted. If I could have a seconder on that. Councillor Marshalsea, thank you very much. Agenda item 8, quarter 1 revenue monitoring 24-25, Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. And so, yeah, this report sets out the position to the end of June 2024. So included in the report are some small amendments requested to correct the opening position. So again, there are significant pressures across school, additional learning needs, children and adult social services and homelessness. And these largely reflect a continuation of the pressures that emerged in 23-24. So across the services, inflationary pressures are also being experienced in respect of pay, most notably where market forces are being utilised and for the funding gap between the provision for the 24-25 pay award and the likely pay award for 24-25. So the council only allocated very limited contractual inflation as part of the 24-25 budget and no general inflation for some years, and this will have a general impact on the resilience of the revenue budget. Key pressures within the Directorate are retirement and redundancy costs in schools, reduction in out-of-county income for pupils and other local authorities attending special schools and resource bases, children's placement costs due to increase in numbers of placements and the increase in cost of placements. And despite additional funding allocated as part of the 24-25 budget process, school transport is likely to be a significant pressure in year due to demographic changes and provider price uplifts, and work is being undertaken at the moment to quantify the pressures in this area. The learning and skills budget was set at 133.4 million for 24-25, and the Directorate are currently projecting a drawdown of 5.37 million of unplanned use of reserves. And of that 5.3 million, 4.3 of that relates to schools and the remainder to central learning and skills. So at the time of writing the report, school budgets were currently in the process of being signed off and recovery plans submitted for schools in deficit, with an initial projection of 9 million net deficit after allowing for carry forward balances from 23-24. So as we have observed in previous years, and with consideration of the ongoing work streams to help reduce school deficits, it's likely that this net deficit sum will reduce as we progress through the year. Currently, this monitoring assumes that the full value of school balances of the 2.3 million will be utilised in year, plus a 2 million provided for as part of the reserves at outturn position. So a more detailed analysis will be prepared as part of the Q2 monitoring in November. And delays on implementation of savings will also impact the 24-25 outturn across services. And this in part is due to the time required to effectively implement savings of this scale, but also reflects the capacity restraints within teams. Challenging savings and efficiency targets have been set out for 24-25 for the Council for 7.676 million. And the progress against these savings targets are reflected in the appendix and summarised in the report, with 76% of 24-25 savings projected to be achieved or mitigated in year. For the whole Council, in the context of these significant and sustained service pressures, unplanned use of reserves is currently projected to be approximately 13.6 million. The Council has various work streams progressing to mitigate the unplanned use of reserves and reduce the in-year overspends. So examples of these are the Schools Budget Task Force, with particular work streams around consideration of all schools, contracts and agency spend. Additional resources being put in place to accelerate the delivery of our savings. Controls on new recruitment and non-essential spend. And directors are also working with service accountants to manage the unplanned drawdown on service reserves. And there's also a review of the use of our grant expenditure. So the unplanned use of reserves will significantly reduce the reserve balances available by the end of March 25. And at the moment, the projected position that's set out within the report it sees reserves reducing to £50.6 million. That's a summary of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you again, Victoria. So over to committee if there are any questions or comments. Councillor Marshall, Sue.
Hi, Victoria. Just a quick one. I was getting a bit confused about the green flag status because at some points it said it wasn't being applied for, and other points it was. Do you know if they were doing the green flag applications or not?
I don't know, but I can find out for you.
And I was just wondering if they didn't do it, which is understandable, depending on cost. What was that? Would that cost have been? I'm aware it doesn't really fall under learning and skills, but it's because I'm the champion of part of that. I was just interested.
Yeah, that's no problem. I can take that away for you.
Thanks, Naomi. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Victoria. One of the issues you can look at was the agency spend, and that was something I brought up in the agenda conference, which was about the culture of agency spending within schools. So that was something I brought up, to examine, was why some are more prone to use agency staff, others aren't. So I'm pleased that has been raised as one of the things that is going to be examined in terms of the budget. So well done. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodges.
Hi, yeah, just briefly on the green flags. I understand it's a couple of £100 per application. The Vale hasn't applied for any. The flagpoles are now naked and empty. But I'm pleased to say that Merthyr Devon Cemetery in Barry has retained it through Barry Town Council. It's a shame. The main issue, I think, is not the green flag. It's the fact that the Vale then doesn't need to continue the standards of attaining a green flag. I think that's the main issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I can't see any other hands up at the moment. But Victoria, you mentioned difficulties with school transport, and we've explored those a lot on the committee. Obviously, the recent stories about a neighbouring authority in Bridgend are concerning for parents there. So, do you foresee the Vale of Glamorgan Council having to make any reductions to school transport provision in a similar way?
I might let Trevor come in and help me on that question if that's okay.
That's okay.
Available.
Howdy, yes, I'm here. I don't know too many of the details around what's happening in Bridgend. The challenge that we have here, obviously, we have fewer drivers that are available. The cost of those contracts are going way up. And those operators, the way that they work is they don't just service our schools, they cross borders and they go all over the place. So we've got something to do. What we're looking at doing, what can we change potentially in terms of pickup and drop-off times? Is that going to make a difference going forward because it gives us a greater, economies of scale with some of these service providers? But beyond that, there isn't too much we can do because there just aren't enough drivers and operators at the moment. So it is a risk, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. I can't see any other hands up. So in that case, I move that we note the position with regard to the authority's 24-25 revenue budget, and in addition to the vehemence requested as part of this report. If I could have a seconder, please. Thanks, Councillor Payne. Agenda item 9 then, the capital closure of accounts 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so yeah, this report outlines the outturn of the 23-24 capital programme. It outlines it by directorate and details the funding sources used to fund the programme. So the report notes the adjusted approved budget of 103.8 million at year end, with total capital expenditure during the year of 88.6 million. So despite capital schemes facing continued challenges, including significant cost increases and shortage of resources, it should be noted that 85.35% of the programme was spent before the end of the financial year. Slippage of 15 million into the 24-25 capital programme has been approved by emergency powers. So further scheme-by-scheme detail can be found in Appendix 1 and the summary position of all the changes within the capital programme at directorate level from approval at council in March 23 all the way to March 24 is set out in Appendix 2. Outturn for this scrutiny committee in particular was 24.4 million against an adjusted programme of 28.1 million, and slippage of 3.6 million was requested. So a breakdown of the funding of the capital programme is also provided within the body of the report. Capital expenditure in the year was sufficient to cover a full allocation of the supported borrowing from Welsh Government. Further funding streams were also used, including a total of 43.3 million grant, which includes our Section 106 contributions as well. 29.3 million has also been drawn down from reserves or funded through a revenue contribution to capital. We received 1 million capital receipts in 23-24. The capital receipts balance as at the 31st of March was 7.7 million, and a breakdown is provided within the report. So the report also highlights some of the schemes that have been successfully delivered within the year. And this includes within Learning and Skills, 11 schemes that were funded through the Community Focused Schools Grant Scheme, including a scheme undertaken at Romiley Primary in relation to the sports barn, which provided a new interior, updated entrance and a kitchen for community use. I'm happy to take any questions on that capital report.
Thank you for that, Victoria. So over to committee members if there are any thoughts. I can't see any hands on that one, Victoria. So if there aren't any comments or thoughts from councillors, in that case, I move that so we note the year-end capital position for the financial year, the additional scheme budgets in Appendix 1, the summary position of changes in the capital programme in Appendix 2, and the emergency power approved in Appendix 3. If I could have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Payne. Thank you. Agenda item 10 then, capital monitoring for the period 1st of April to 30th of June 2024. Victoria.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And so, yeah, the report gives an update on the progress of the capital programme to the end of June 24. And at the time of writing, the approved programme totalled 139.9 million. But after the requests within the report were approved, the revised forecast outturn is 134.9 million. And at the end of June, for the whole capital programme, the total spend was 8.8 million. So again, Appendix 1 details on a scheme-by-scheme basis the progress of the capital programme. And it's still important to note that many areas are still continuing to experience an increase in cost associated with the delivery of the schemes. Tenders are being received over the current allocated budgets, and officers are reporting the requirement to renegotiate submitted tenders. The total spend at the 30th of June in relation to learning and skills is 2.17 million, with a forecast outturn at 52 million. So it's important to note that a lot of the works on schools would have happened within the summer holidays. So obviously the spend should pick up quite significantly when you receive the Q2 report. So schemes are being closely monitored throughout the year to identify overspends and any slippages, and 4.9 million has been requested in this quarter's monitoring, and that's mainly due to the reprofiling of some of the Safer Community for Learning schemes. There are 3 delegated authorities that have been approved within the report. And also the report requests to make several amendments to the current capital programme, again, reprofiling of the Safer Communities for Learning schemes, the removal of the early years and childcare scheme at St Athan, the carry forward of some budget in relation to Victoria Primary Boundary Wall, an inclusion of an outdoor area improvement scheme at Ysgol-y-Derry, and the merging of Jenner Park primary school roofing schemes, but that was just for easy management of the programme. They were in phases, so it was just easier to merge that budget together. I'm happy to take any questions on that report, Chair.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Over to committee. Okay, I don't see any hands up for you, Victoria, so in that case, I move that we note progress made on delivering the 24-25 capital programme, the use of delegated authority within the remit of the committee, and the use of emergency powers, and also changes to the 24-25 capital programme and future years capital programme. If I could have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you, Victoria, for taking all those financial reports in a row. I know it's a lot, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to agenda item 11 then, it's the annual delivery plan monitoring reports, Q1 performance 24-25.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me tonight. For those who don't know me, I'm Julia Racine. I work in the Learning and Skills Directorate on strategy and performance related matters. The performance report I'm going to present tonight to you is our progress on the Q1 period that relates to the 1st of April to the 30th of June this year, and it details kind of our progress against the annual delivery plan commitments of 24-25, which is also aligned to our corporate plan wellbeing objectives. If it's okay, Chair, I'm about to present to you, share screen with you now, the actual report itself as a summary slideshow. Is everyone able to see that?
Yeah, we can see the waiting for sharing source screen.
It might just take a minute to come on.
That's okay.
Shout to me if it doesn't. Julia, the source isn't coming through. Have you clicked it on the source window? Yeah, hold on a sec. Let me retry a second. Let me try that. Has that helped? I've redone it.
Yeah, we can see that. That's great. Thank you.
Amazing. Sorry. Right. So tonight, what I'm going to present to you then, what should be currently being shared on screen at the moment, is included in your papers in Appendix A. It's intended to provide you with an overview of performance during the Q1 period.
The detailed performance commentary associated with all activities and measures as part of this presentation is outlined in Appendix B, should members wish to examine this in greater detail. So committee members are being asked tonight to consider the Q1 performance report and to refer any of their views and recommendations to Cabinet for their consideration. So I'll quickly go over to the next slide. So in terms of achievements and key highlights for the past quarter, I'd like to draw members' attention to the Youth Wellbeing Service has enhanced its staff capacity to increase the availability of group support activities. Consequently, this has had a positive impact on shortening the length of time support is required, which has in turn reduced waiting times following referral. The service has supported over 89 young people and delivered 526 one-to-one mentoring sessions during the period in schools and across our communities. Then I'd like to draw your attention to work on the development of a pastoral support plan portal, which has been successfully now completed. What's known as the PSP portal has begun to be rolled out across schools now in September. The local authority continues to have relatively low numbers of pupils on reduced timetables, and as of Q1, it was around 80 learners. There's also been the development of a central hub for learners for those most at risk of living in deprivation, and this is based in the YMCA in Barry, which is currently being used by multiple partners during the daytime and also by educational teams, including out-of-school tuition and the EOTUS teams, and plans are now in place to make greater use of this facility and resource in September going forward. There's also been an enhanced cross-directorate working between the ALN and Complex Needs team, the Blind Start team and Childcare Offer teams through providing access through our One system, which is the local authority's case management system within Learning and Skills. This has ensured that information on a child can be shared effectively between teams and enhance joint working practices. Good progress has been made in promoting the use of Welsh across our schools, with 13 schools during the period receiving targeted support for Siata Iaith, apologies for the pronunciation, and Cymraeg Campus, with 2 of these schools making effective progress with achieving awards associated with it. The Learning Links team continue to support 24 schools who have now signed the City of Sanctuary Pledge and are actively working towards becoming a school of sanctuary. St Cyree Secondary School has already achieved this school of sanctuary status and is looking to retain this going forward. And I can now also report currently Holton Road is the first primary to be awarded this status also. In terms of areas of improvement, the Directorate is looking to enhance its approach to engagement with learners and its communities, where the focus will be on producing easy read policies and strategies. We are looking to remodel our relationship with service users by developing enhanced engagement opportunities to support access to grants and income generation. For example, such as the development that's currently going on with the Friends groups within the Arts Central Gallery. We're looking to strengthen post-16 collaborative opportunities. Ongoing discussions are happening between the consortium and the regeneration lead for the Vale in order to build stronger and better links with local employers. Work on a post-16 ALN collaboration is also developing and will continue to be an area of focus going forward. Another area of improvement we've identified is the tracking of learners leaving education, which remains an area for us to work on. Further work is underway to enhance the tracking of these learners to reduce numbers which are not in education, employment or training. The priority focus has been on identifying those most at risk of becoming NEET and using the school referral process as a proactive measure. In terms of looking at areas of continuing development, what we're focusing on at the moment is working with schools to enhance our use of data and analysis from the My Concern tool that Jason previously mentioned in his safeguarding update for the consistent reporting of bullying and harassment. We're looking to further embed and expand the whole school approach to enhance wellbeing of learners and staff across our schools. The Directorate is making effective use of its wellbeing data it collects from commission providers to give us much better insight on meeting those needs of our learners. And we're also looking to develop on refreshing the Move More, Eat Well strategic programme, which is currently underway. The focus going forward will be on systems mapping and identifying actions to launch a revised programme of work during the autumn. Now into emerging areas of concern. As previously noted earlier in the agenda, the number of schools facing budgetary deficits remains a key area of concern. The Directorate continues to make use of its budget forum as a means to work collaboratively with school leaders and senior leadership of the local authority. Going forward, there will be discussions around budget and the identification of actions to strengthen schools' financial positions. As previously mentioned earlier in the meeting, attendance levels at secondary and primary schools continue to be an area of ongoing focus. At secondary schools, our overall year-to-date attendance between September to June this year was 85.93%, which actually demonstrates an improvement on the previous year, which was 84.6%. However, it must be noted this is still 4% below target of 91%. Equally, primary school attendance year-to-date up until June this year was 92.62%, which is an improvement on the previous year of 91.6%, but it's just below 1% below target currently. In terms of combined performance across all our schools year-to-date up till June, it was 89.6%, which is in line with the Welsh average of 89.5%, which then ranks us 9th in Wales. The other aspect to mention as an area of concern is the rise in school exclusions. As at June, across primary schools, there were a total of 20 incidents and 100 incidents across secondary schools. 95% of exclusions across both primary and secondary schools are for 5 days or less, so minimising the impact of lost learning. As at June, there are 11 permanent exclusions across our secondary schools. We are continuing to see a greater trend of exclusions affecting children and young people, particularly with ALN, or those who are eligible for free school meals. The rise in exclusions across schools can be linked to the growth in complex needs and the increased number of learners which are struggling with social, emotional and mental health issues. Work across the school clusters continues to focus where there is deprivation to address issues around attendance and exclusions. That's pretty much all I've got to share with you now tonight. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have, but given the breadth of the service areas that get covered as part of this committee's remit, where I'm unable to provide you a response, I'm sure either the Director or the heads of service on the call will be able to jump in and answer on my behalf. Thank you very much, Chair.
That's great. Thank you for that, Julia. Councillor Marshalsea.
Thanks, Julia. I was just having a quick look at some of the areas of concern. I was just wondering what the percentage of attendance is at Llantwit, and if you're not sure of that, just sort of why that one tends to be a bit lower. We understand about Pencoitry, and when speaking to Mr. Robertson, it looks like the percentage of attendance there is up this term, which is great. I was just wondering the reasons behind Llantwit.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. It is an area of concern. It's on our radar as it gets picked up across our departmental management team meetings. I'm sure Liz will want to jump in now. It's one of the ones that's been on our radar for a little while now, and it's one to monitor.
I think we lost Julia. Liz, do you want to step in?
I'll finish off that if that's okay, Chair. Going back to a previous recommendation is to bring a report about attendance, and I think that might be a good time to unpack that, because you'll see the difference then, or where our particular pinch points are. But Julia was right in saying that this is on the radar, but maybe we could unpack it in a bit more in the future meeting, if that's okay, Chair.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Thank you, Liz. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know who's going to take it. It's a point, really. And I know I'm banging on about the same thing which I mentioned in a previous agenda item, but I'm saddened by the fact that we haven't got in this document a point making that we need to ensure that schools are a safe working place for teachers, bearing in mind what happened earlier on with Pencoitry. So I just think that should be added, or considered to be added. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Would Liz or Julia like to respond?
Is it okay if I respond, Chair?
Of course.
What we're trying to do is, through my concern, is to develop an opportunity for our staff as well as our children to be able to report where they've got any concerns at all, and we will be monitoring that, and hopefully that will address things, and we'll be able to access that information at a local authority level, and again to be able to identify any trends before they become issues. Thank you.
May I come back quickly, Chair?
Yes.
Again, I'm just saying this document or documents we produce is a useful time to tell teachers that we're supporting them. It's all right that we intend to do it, but if it's recorded that we know there's a problem and we're trying to deal with that problem, it helps the teachers understand that they're being listened to.
Thanks, Liz. I don't know if you want to come back on that point.
I think just to reassure members, really, we do a concerted effort to support the well-being of our staff. And I was at Scrutiny only a matter of months ago, talking you through the strategy for supporting the emotional well-being and mental health of all of our schools, including staff as well. And there are particular measures in there to make sure that we do promote that and also signpost to external providers that we have, as well as the support that we provide in-house. But we do already invest in that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. As there seems to be a link to some of these problems and ALN, as it was mentioned, I was just wondering if a head of special needs has been appointed yet.
Well, that's a very timely question, because the closing date was this week for the head of service, and shortlisting will be done at the tomorrow. So fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if there'd been any progress on the St Richard Gwyn. I'm just looking at to work collaboratively to ensure sufficiency and provision to address the skills of staff to address the challenges. And one of the things was looking at the tender for Richard Gwyn, which closed on the 11th of July. So has there been any progress? I know it's a green.
Do you mean the build program itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, good progress, and you've got a report inbound on that soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Trevor.
No worries.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up. In that case, then, I move that we note the Q1 reports and that comments from this committee be referred to the Cabinet. If I could have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Emma Goodjohn, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and we'll meet again in October. Thank you.